Hi there, my name is Robert Johansson and I also known as the RBIm guy. I run a website, notenlp.com, and people when they hear the name they say, you do NLP? No, it's not NLP. I do have an NLP background, yeah. But I found out a long time ago that, it's about the process and no one can really define it, and it's like, oh, I don't know what that is all about. It's kind of like guesswork. So I had to develop my own stuff. So today I'm going to talk about RBIm 4.0. And some people will say, do you have a previous revision of RBIm? Yes. And it's a model. It stands for Realization Behavioral Integration Model. Because you have to realize some kind, you have behaviors. And RBIm 4.0 adds what I call self-sustaining generalizations, or SSG for short. It's self-sustaining generalizations. Other side works or not. So let me give you an example of what's SSG is all about. The self-sustained generalization. It's kind of a big word. I never heard about that before. What's that about that? I never did read it in a book, so does it really exist? Stuff like that, right? You don't know what it is. Can it be anything? So let's give an example. Let's say someone is shy. When they're meeting people, they kind of, are shy. So you ask them about that, right? And the typical answer is that, well, they don't really know. And it's always been like this. So always is like a quantifier. When people use that kind of word, it's like how they experience the, in this case, the shyness or other stuff like that. So when you start asking questions about it, you can more or less define when it did start. Well, when it started in the first grade, people say, well, first grade. Now the question here is, should I point to my right side or my left side? Because in the mirror kind of way, that means it's reversed. So I'm going to point it. Okay, it started somewhere in the first grade. Okay, so that's the first reference for the contextual frame, which is part of the self-sustained generalization. And when does it end? Well, the trick here is it doesn't end. That's why people use the word always, because it doesn't end. It's always been like this. That's how people experience it. So you then add an endpoint to that. So do you want it to end to this evening or tomorrow maybe? And the individual might say, yeah, tomorrow will be great. Okay. So then you have a starting point, you have an end point of tomorrow. So then you have a contextual frame. And this kind of contextual frame then has what we call in RBIm 4.0 a self-sustained generalization, because you have also meaning into that. So you ask them about this self-sustained generalization, what's the meaning of the shyness? And they say, well, I kind of feel embarrassed, or my heart pumping, or I feel, sweaty and all that stuff. I get red in my face, I don't know why, it's always been like this. So if you try to work with that as a therapist or a coach or something like that, something really interesting happens. If you don't do it this way, the brain will start to generalize it and try to keep that, So it's like if you try to stop smoking, losing weight, starting a new habit, whatever. A lot of people try, but the willpower is not enough, because the generalization itself starts to include the problem into whatever it gets exposed for, the environment, other people, stuff like that. And how we deal with that is not to work with this kind of generalization that we have with that kind of shyness. So we have a starting point, we have an end point. Okay, cool. We have the meaning of it, what it means to be shy, heart pumping, red in the face, feeling embarrassed, whatever it is, right? So we then, in our case, so we start. So how do you want to react to people? How do you want to interact with people in your life then? So you set the starting point, which is obviously either late tomorrow or the next day, right? And you can also set it like, well, when I walk out my house or my apartment, then I want it to start. And I want it to add, well, maybe when I'm coming back home. And in the meantime, I want to have some kind of meaning of and enjoyment when I'm talking to people. Some will even say, well, I would like to be normal. some people say, well, I don't think it's normal to be that shy, so I want to be normal. Sometimes people know what that is, sometimes they have no idea, so you have to learn that. I don't want to go into that today, but so instead of dealing with the old SSG, like I like to say, with the contextual frame we created there, we create a new one that you want to have, and we add, once you have the start point and the end point of that in your own control, then you can add the meaning that you want to have within that kind of generalization, self-sustaining generalization. Because this RBIm 4.0 is about understanding why change is difficult for people. Change is really, really difficult because when you experience something, it's like always, right? So you just have it, and it's, and when you try to change it, work it, it's going to become difficult. Once you start to map this into contextual format, like start and end points, and the meaning of that, you start to have what we call manageable operation. You know, you're taking what's abstract in your head, you know, with the representation and everything, and you put it into a way of, oh, this is what this is about, okay, but I don't want that, I want this kind of stuff when I start, and then it's like that, and I have this kind of meaning when I interact with people, and that's what I feel really great about myself, and, you know, I kind of, oh yeah, and a lot of other cool stuff will happen to me. And that's how you do it, because the brain localizes information, and it's your brain in reality works by construction of reality. That's not a new thing. I mean, science has known that for ages. We know that when you constructing information in your brain, you need to have a way of either change that or alter it in a way to make sense to you. So it works the way you want it to work, not like I don't know why I'm reacting like this. In RBIm 3.0 we did a self-elicit, so we ask a few questions to elicit ourselves. So we have an internal reference, a localized reference for ourselves. Then we can map the SSG if you need to, or then map a new one instead of the old one. And people say, how do you change those? How do you replace the old one? Well, if you do it this way, it becomes more like when you order food at the restaurant. What do you want to have today? What kind of restaurant do you want to go to? And most people say, well, I want to go to a restaurant where the food, kind of exciting, that new food, the new restaurant that open up or something like that. People have different criteria there that, wow, what kind of restaurant do I want to, or vacation, or buying a car. This becomes much like the same thing. Once you understand that this is what you want, the brain can start doing that for you, because the brain works by attention. Understanding how this works is that it's really complex, because a lot of people, when they try to stop smoking, they can't, because they have urges, they have like some, a lot of other things going on, and every time I have a cup of coffee, then I have to take a smoke, and I have some coffee in, and you go like, wow, I really need to have cigarette now. But if you map it into SSG or self-sustained generalization, as you do in RBIm 4.0, then that doesn't happen the same way. Because if you define it, whatever is going on right now, and you start to define what you want to do instead, that's much easier for you to choose what you want it to be. But if you don't do that, you always run into the feedback loop of the system. And the feedback loop, which is the comparison mode in RBIm, which I mapped a long time, many years ago, is that the comparison mode will always kick in. And the thing I counter over that, NLP couldn't give me the answers I wanted. Because I asked questions and I asked people in NLP, they couldn't answer me. I was like, man, you guys who know so much in this technology and all that stuff, why can't you, give me the answer to the questions? I have to develop my own technology. I found out that if you elicit the future experience, for example, if you want to elicit the future experience and have that kind of experience, people kick in the comparison mode. Kind of a nice concept. And they make a comparison between that, and whatever else they want to do. And as soon as they do that, they lose the experience. I've seen that in people's trainings, when they, people have no idea what the experience they have. So when they try to confirm they have that kind of experience they want to have, they change it into the comparison mode. And people then use hypnosis, other tricks to try to deal with that they call specific. and precision in the one, and I disagree on that, because hypnosis is anything about kind of go to a special place where you feel safe. That's a general vague sentence, so people go okay. But if you tell them to go to a special place that's on the beach, some people might have beach, it's a way of sharks or snakes. I don't like beach because that's too specific, the brain can't start. And when the hypnotists do things, they start a contextual frame that start about, listen to my voice, and you go deep down in trance. And later on they give you instruction to deal whatever, general, specific, whatever. And then when you come up from the deep trance and you feel really great now, and people go, oh yeah, that's a contextual frame. But to do that effectively, you have to be really, really skilled, and most people don't know it. So if you start using this RBIm 4.0 concept, what you will find is that you can take whatever is abstract in behaviors and feeling, emotions, stuff like that, flashbacks, memories, whatever you call it, and you will start to be able to make it manageable. You can deal with it in a different way, and then you can start adding a new solution, a new way of experience, the same context that works better for you. And this is about understanding if you don't do that, the brain will feed back into the comparison mode and shift you out of the experience. If you do it this way, that won't happen. Because then you choose either this one or that one, and choice is yours. And NLP for me back in the day, was over 20 years ago, was reading about that NLP stuff, and it all was about choice. But last 15 years I've been, even more, I was saying, I don't think you guys are about choice anymore. It's more like, kind of silly and, closed-mindedness and stuff like that, and wow, NLP is so great and all that stuff. It is in its, basic form, or whatever you call that. But there's a difficulty there with NLP, because, it's not about choice anymore. So how do you create choice? Well, I would say that's what you do with RBIm 4.0 with the SSG, the self-sustained generalization. When you start doing that, you will start being able to change habits. You will be able to start changing your life to experience the way. Because even if you listen to decide, want to experience, people want to have it now. Yes, wow, ooh, yoo. At some point, life will happen, and they can't do it anymore. Kind of strange, right? Because they run into a comparison to get new information. And people yell at them, or people say, well, you can't be a dreamer, or you have to be realistic, or whatever. There's always a critic out there, telling you what to do or not to do, or what you can or what you can't do. So we want choice, but choice is really difficult without, being able to set that up for you. And the way I, over the last few years when I've been writing my blog, is that if you kind of do it this way, you start to have a different way of organizing information, so you can do change easier. I won't say it's, like as easy as what restaurant to use or choose, but it will get a lot easier, because once you start to get a hang of this concept, it's really, I can't make it simpler. If I could, I would do. But once you set the contextual frame, when it ends, you're isolating your context in your brain. Your brain can manage that. But if you don't do that, as I was saying from the start, it's always that when you shyness. And obviously, if it's always like this, any solution you try to give them will feed back into the comparison they have, and they will start to, repeat the pattern. They will, they can't change it, because they think, well, I need confidence. So, because if I have confidence, that will fix my shyness. It won't work like that. So we don't need to change the problem. We need to build a new self-sustained generalization, which you can choose then and use instead. And your experience of that will mean that you can walk out and meet people and talk to people and feeling what people would say normal, whatever that is. Depending on who you talk to, it's a little bit of philosophical debate there. I don't want this to be too long as a tape, since I wanted to just give you the rough idea of how the self-sustaining generalizations work, and stuff like that. And I'm the RBIm guy. I write a blog and I write about stuff I'm interested in, obviously. Maybe I should write about stuff other people are interested in. I don't know. I think it makes more sense what I'm interested in. And some people who have been following my blog for a few years, they have done things I call impressive. And I'm really proud of you guys out there who've done that. Work for yourself. And I hope you will have fun with this also. And if you have any question about that, you can make a comment on the blog and I will try to answer as good as I can. RBIm 4.0, this is the RBIm guy signing out. Yes sir, yes sir, boom, 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 boom. No, just signing out. Have fun.